Hello, Ryan Miller here. I'm going to give you a quick start intro into Substance Painter 1.4. My older Substance Painter video got a lot of views, but it's kind of out of date now, so this will be an amendment to the old one. A couple steps are no longer necessary, and there's a couple extra steps that you can do now. So to get started, we're going to need a model to work with, so we're not actually going to start in Substance Painter. We're going to start in Maya, or 3ds Max, or Blender, or Moto, or Cinema 4D, or whatever it is that you use. What we want is to bring a UV unwrapped model from our 3D package into Substance Painter. The requirements for this 3D model is to have a UV map, preferably one better unwrapped than this auto unwrap right here. The most important thing for the UV requirements though is that they be laid out without any kind of stacking and that everything be on one map. So everything is on one map, as pathetic as it may be. I'm going to close that. We also want to make sure that our mesh is named, our materials are named, and just generally that we have clean geometry. Make sure you turn on backface culling, have a peek, make sure that nothing is inside out. So from there, we'll take our mesh, we're going to export the selection, so we're going to export just what we want to keep as an FBX. I'm going to throw it on my desktop. And as far as the FBX export settings go, it's very simple. We don't want any animation on it, and we don't need any of these additional options to be selected. So keep those off. Okay, and we'll export this into an FBX. Okay, so popping back over to Substance Painter, now we're going to create a new document that uses this FBX. So File New, and in the File New dialog, the first thing it asks for is your mesh. So we can click the Select button, grab that FBX that we made, and leave everything else how it is. 9 times out of 10 you're going to want to use the directx normal map format, and 1024 is a pretty good starting resolution, though we can change that at any time we want. Something that's newer and nicer about Substance Painter as well is that we don't need to bake our maps in an outside program. We can bake curvature, ambient occlusion, etc. all inside Substance Painter right now. And if you don't know what those are, that's okay. Okay, so here is my orc from Maya. Moving around is the same as in Maya if you're a Maya user. If you're not familiar with that, basically you hold down the Alt key, left click drag will rotate, right click will zoom, and middle click will pan you around. Okay, my view is a single pane view right now. If you want to change that, that's over here. It's bound to the F keys. You're probably defaulting to this kind of view. I like to work with just 3D only because I tend to only want to paint on the model. Although if you like, you can paint on the UV map directly as well. Okay, so I'll keep that on 3D. We can hold down the Shift key and right click drag to move the image-based lighting around and get different lighting effects, see the different lighting affect our model. So that's very good for testing out stuff like metallic or specular, very, very shiny things. I'm not going to explain every single bit of this UI to you. I'm just going to show it to you as you need it. So before we start with anything else, we want to get some baked textures. So baking things like the ambient occlusion map and the curvature map especially allows us to use Substance Painter's built-in tools to automate a lot of this painting for us. So I'm going to click Bake Textures. We can change our bake size here. I'm working at 1024, so I'm just going to bake them to 1024. That doesn't mean you have to. You can bake at a lower resolution. Typically the limiting factor here is just how fast your computer is, or how fast your video card specifically is. So if you're working on a laptop, you're probably going to want to work lower resolution. So I'm going to bake not the normal, not the ID. I don't really care about thickness right now. Mostly I'm after world space normal, curvature, position, and ambient occlusion is nice. So check all those. The default settings for all of them are fine. Click Bake Textures. And there we go, baking's finished. They're all plugging in automatically. Big time saver there. If this background's distracting you, you can check just in the viewer settings here. There's environment opacity that you can slide down, and we can look at it just in a kind of black-gray background. So how do we actually put some materials onto this object? You'll notice a layer menu over here, very much like the Photoshop layer menu. there are two types of layers in Substance Painter. So there are the layers that are transparent that we're used to working with in Photoshop, and those are layers in which I can just paint on the model, and anything I don't paint on is transparent, anything I do is opaque, and you get those varying levels of transparency in between. We also have what are called fill layers. So you can check out this paint bucket icon over here, add a fill layer, and what a fill layer does is this is a layer that has a material associated with it and will just flood your entire model. So when I create a fill layer, you see that this properties fill comes up. I can change the color here, so I can make this red, so everything on this layer is red. I can change the height, which isn't going to look like much all on its own. We can change how shiny it is by changing the roughness, and how reflective it is with the metallic. So we can go for, red chrome if we want, or we can just kind of go completely matte with our surface. Any brush you're using, any material that's on a fill layer or any other kind of layer, you can choose which channels to affect. So right now I'm painting with color, height, roughness, and metal. I can say that this only affects the color, and now all the layers underneath this, their height, rough, and metal data will be used, where this layer will only affect the color, which is very, very helpful. So not only can I configure my own kind of color, roughness, height, metallic here, I can choose from all of these built-in materials to get me started quickly. So with this fill layer selected, I can select different materials in my material browser here and preview them on my mesh very, very quickly. And this tends to be my preferred workflow. I'll find if any of these materials gets me most of the way to what I want for the texture of my character, and then I'll configure them further. I find it's a little bit easier than building them from scratch every time. So I think I can make frog leather work. So let's leave that there and let's play with that a little bit and give him some kind of gross lumpy skin. So you'll notice a lot of these materials are very configurable, so I can change, in this case, the main color, the worn tip color, so I can make him kind of not quite such a contrasty difference there. And I should be able to change the repeating here. There we go. So we got UV scale. We can change how often this is repeating. It's a very sensitive slider, watch out. So I think just 2 or 3 is going to be good. If you have a specific value you want to put into these fields, you can click on the pencil and then type it in. So there we go, I can use 5. So again, lots of parameters here. I'm not going to explain them all because these are all very discoverable. You can play with these and figure them out on your own. One more thing I'll go into here with the basic channels is, notice here with the base color in our layers, we're actually changing which channel these layers affect. So I can go to the height, I can go to the roughness, I can specify which channel's opacity or blend mode I'm using here. So we got linear dodge for height at 100% opacity. We can actually turn down the influence of this height map. So this height map is a little bit less opaque, less extreme. And like I mentioned earlier, we can go up in resolution anytime we want, so I can change this from 1024 to 2048. You'll notice it gets a little bit clearer. You can go up to 4K, which I think is the current limit, although it's pretty laggy for painting unless you're on a very fast system. So I tend to stick on 1024. There we go. So we got a decent looking fill for this character now. Before I paint out every single part of this, I'm going to show you some little shortcuts for painting in stuff like dirt and edge wear without actually having to paint it in. First I'm going to name this layer, so I'm going to call this Orc Skin, and I'm going to delete layer 1 because I'm not actually using it. Okay, so I got Orc Skin here. I'm going to make a new layer, so this is going to be my kind of dirt in the cracks here. So this orc doesn't shower very much, so let's make a fill layer that is just the dirt on this orc's body. I'm not going to go too fancy with the material here. You can absolutely create your own dirt texture or configure something in the library to work well for that, but I'm just going to go with kind of a browny mucky color. I'm going to change the base color's blend mode to multiply, so this is kind of like darkening dirt based on what's already here. And then I'm going to mask it out. So I'm going to call this Skin Dirt. And I'm going to use a mask. So If you work in Photoshop a lot, you're probably familiar with masks. It's kind of like you can paint on or off for a current layer. So I'm going to add a black mask. So again, black is off, white is on. Black will hide everything, don't panic. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a generator to this mask. So I'm going to add an effect called the generator. And inside this generator, again, make sure the generator is on the mask, on this black part, not on your color layer. So no generators are selected. I can click one. And here we have all of our generators that are built in. So I'm going to put just regular dirt on. So this is the first one. And we can see here what it's doing is it's using the curvature map along with a bit of a filter just to give us some shape to the dirt. And we're actually getting dirt creeping in from the edges exactly where it would collect normally. So we can change that level of dirt. We can change the contrast if we think that's a little bit too extreme. The grunge, and again that's that extra texture that's coming in that looks pretty nice. How much it masks the edges. You can see a subtle difference there. And we can create just that really quick edge dirt that would have taken a lot longer to paint manually. We can add another one too, so let's add a wear color. So this might be where his skin is kind of like worn from lots and lots of battles perhaps. So I'm going to call this skin wear. And this is kind of, some people will call this kind of like an edge detect sometime. This is where, you know, the edges of objects tend to get worn off and they take on a lighter color. So I'm not going to pressure myself too much to pick the perfect color here because this is all really easy to change later on. So there's my skin wear. I'm going to add a black mask, and this is going to be very similar to the dirt generator that we made. So with that black mask selected, I'm going to add a generator effect. I'm going to select one of the edge wear ones, so you can see MG edge dirt, edge notch, edge select. I tend to use edge metal edges a lot, even for things that aren't metal. I just like the way that they tend to work. So let's find that. There we go, metal edge wear. I find that one has a nice kind of texture to it. And you can see, it's again, this is using the curvature map kind of in the opposite way that the dirt did. To find areas that are poking out. So you can see the edge of this is really poking out, right? This is a creased edge. The horns kind of have that. That looks like it might be a bit of an error just with how low poly this object is with the curvature map that was generated from it. We can change that though. We can change the wear level and it should pick up the differences here. And again, this should be a subtle effect. It's very, very hard to remind yourself to do subtle effects when you're starting with a new program like this because you're so excited about the great features that are in it. It's easy to go overboard. So if you find you're kind of going overboard, do what you like, do what looks really, really cool and strong, and just turn the opacity down when you're done. Just a little bit will show wonders. Cool. So pretty happy with the skin texture here. I'm going to kind of leave that how it is. We'll start filling in some other parts of the model beyond just the basic skin. So I'll make a new layer, and I'm going to use this for his hat. So this will be his hat top. Probably something kind of leather would be good here, but not to the same frog leather we are using for his body. I also noticed that the height map, especially of this layer, is combining with the layers underneath. See how even though this is a new material, it's combining with the layers underneath. We can change the height channel's blend mode from linear dodge to just normal. And now this is going to show over top. It's going to start brand new from what's below it. Alright, I think, you know, a bark hat might actually be kind of cool. Yeah, let's go with a bark hat and see if we can pull that off. Let's get a wooden hat. Yeah. So I only want this to affect this top part of his head, right? So I'm going to add a black mask. Again, I like using this this masking workflow because it's very, very quick and you can select things quickly. For selecting out parts of the model, good news is we don't have to paint in or off parts of the model. We can use the geometry to make selections very, very quickly. So instead of using the paintbrush tool here, instead of changing the color to white and then painting in to reveal this texture, which is very, very imprecise. There's a lot of mistakes we can make while doing this. We can accidentally creep onto the head, we can creep onto the horns, etc. We can use this geometry decal tool. So geometry decal allows us to make selections based on UV chunks, based on objects, based on faces, or based on triangles. So I'm going to use the color white, because again I'm painting white. This is on, right? And I can click individual faces, and that's actually going to just fill that face with that texture. And you can mix and match these all you want. So if this hat was a separate object, I could just use this object button here, click it once, and that whole object will have been painted. I might be able to get away with using the UV selection here. There we go. So again, if my UV map was better, this would probably be clickable in one go or maybe 2 goes. But this is still quite quick. I think we got all of it. Yep. Cool, so very, very quickly we've masked that out. I'll switch back to my brush just so I don't have to look at that wireframe anymore. Looks good. If I'm missing my dirt, my edgeware that was on here, all I have to do is move this layer down so that those shine on top of it, and we're still getting those that information. We could also just do a new dirt map for the helmet itself if we want, or a new edge select map for that, but I don't think we need to. And let's do one more for the horns. So these horns, I'm just going to go on my own, make a good kind of color set for this. And again, I don't want to reuse the height from the previous layers, so I'm just going to set this to normal. Let's make the horns kind of shiny and a little bit reflective. Okay. And again, right click this, add a black mask, switch over to our geometry decal tool. And I think these are separate objects, so I should be able to just click, click, good, very quick. Then back to brush. So there we go, we've got him painted. He's wearing no clothes. I'll show you the paintbrush tool real quick for the clothes. And let's actually go back to these horns and include his teeth. They're pretty close to horns. So last bit, let's give him a little loincloth here. So I'll make a new layer, and this time we'll actually use the brush tools. So we can call this loincloth. We'll show you the brush tools here. So brush tools are pretty simple here. If you scroll all the way up, brush has several modes here, so you might just have brush basic showing on yours. I recommend setting to brush advanced. So this gives you more control over your brush shape. I'm going to quickly find a material to paint some pants on with. We can use search to filter this, so let's fabric they use. So let's give them some cotton undies. So something to watch out for when you're painting directly with a paintbrush on the model is that we can't go back and change our material later the same way we can with fill layers. This is kind of the #1 reason not to use the brush tool, is you can't go back and adjust what you painted quite as easily. You'd have to paint over it again. So I've got some fabric here. I don't want to paint with a soft brush, so I'm going to crank up my hardness. We get a brush preview up here so you can see how this is working. It's completely pressure sensitive, so get out your tablets, use that if you got them. Make sure you just turn on pen pressure for each of these tools that you want to use pen pressure for. And then check out your preview, make sure you're happy with it, and then we can just paint directly onto the model. We also have symmetry tools in here, so I can click over here, symmetry. It's going to show how the symmetry works. I really like this visualization. It makes it really easy to tell if I'm mirroring the right way or the wrong way. You can adjust how it mirrors in this drop-down menu right beside it. But in this case, this is what I want. So I can just paint down here and it's going to take care of the mirroring for me. So again, this light is not good for me, so I'm going to hold down Shift and right-click, rotate that light around, and paint him some undies. Okay, we also have an eraser tool if you mess up, so Gonna erase that. Paint this back in. If you don't want to look at all these materials at once while you're painting, maybe you're only painting color and you don't want to see all the other channels at the same time, you can press C while you're working to walk through the different channels we have here. So I press C once, it takes me to base color. Press it again, that's height, roughness, metallic, and back to base color. You might be asking why there's a checker box on the, or a checker material on the height map. What that's showing is transparency, because we never actually filled the height with any value. It's just going off transparency. That's not a problem. When we export, it's going to export as just white or some kind of default color. Or sorry, I guess gray for height, not white. So don't worry about that. When you want to go back to your regular channel, just press M. So M is your material mode. We can change our image-based lighting as well. So we've got all these other HDR images that are built into Substance, so we can see what our model looks like in different lighting situations. Just a nice little tip there. Nice to test your model in a variety of lighting situations. Okay, so we're just about done here. I'm going to just paint a little bit of variation in the loincloth so it's not all the same. So again, lots of parameters if you want to customize that cloth a bit more. I'm just going to make this a little bit darker and a little bit softer. Where did my brush hardness go? There we go. A little bit softer. I just painted a little darker right around the legs. We'll embrace a bit of a cartoony style here and giving him an outline. Turn off symmetry. So there you go. That's where we'll wrap this up. Fill layers with masks I find are very, very powerful. I highly recommend using them as much as you can. They're very configurable later, right? So if I want to change his skin color to be silk, I can still do that. That's still completely open to me. Very, very configurable. If you're working for somebody and they say, I don't like the material of this character, you don't need to go and toss your layers in Photoshop and rebuild them again. You just change this one thing. It affects all of the channels it's associated with. One more thing I'll leave you with to kind of play with on your own is these particle brushes that are built in. These are usually the first thing that people get their hands on in Substance Painter. They're a lot of fun. I definitely think they're a bit gimmicky though. So we got stuff like this leaking brush. So what they're doing is they're taking this material that you have selected. I'm going to wipe this. I don't want to work with their material. I just want to paint white. And we can paint things on the model. So they're really fun to watch and they're fun to play with, but I think in a year or two everyone's going to kind of recognize that you just covered your model in Substance Painter filters. Leaks. But there are definite situations in which they're very useful. I just recommend not to overuse them. Maybe play with them now and get it out of your system. Once you're done, all you have to do, you can save as your file. So this will just be orc. That's going to save as a Substance Painter file. And when we export it, so file, export all channels, and we have all these nice presets in here now. So if you're working with Unity, you can export for their standard shader. And then you can see these are the files it's going to spit out for you. Or if you're going into Maya, here's the Maya diffuse, normal, roughness, specular. There's some standard PBR things in here as well, so base color, roughness, metallic, normal, height, emissive. Lots and lots of options for you to choose for here. So I'm going to go for standard metallic. Click on this right here to tell it where to go. So it's going to go for my desktop, and I'll just hit export, open folder, and I've got all these images now. So there you go. That's Substance Painter. Have fun.